Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first couple of novels for publication. And on my channel, I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing, and that's the psychology behind the characters, behind the world building, behind everything in the writing. I can't not think of the psychology because that's just how I think. So that's kind of the angle I take with most of the things I talk about on my channel. So today I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind, especially lately, and that is the difference between a sequel and a spin-off. So why has this been on my mind? Well, those of you that have been on my channel a while, you know, a couple weeks ago, I did a video talking about why I feel next generation stories usually don't work. Because they had released they had announced the sequel to Inuyasha, an anime I grew up watching, Yashahime, and it just wrapped up its first season, and to very mixed reviews, I might add. And I can really narrow down my issue with it with one statement, and that's this is a spin-off, not a sequel. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this topic. So first off, let's define what each of them are. So a spin-off is a story that takes place in the same quote-unquote universe, but does not necessarily follow the same characters. In fact, most of the time it will not follow the same characters. It usually can occur concurrently with what the original story was, or it can take place in a completely different timeline. Then you have a sequel, which is a continuation of the original story. Okay, pretty straightforward. So what is the issue here? Well, let me use Yashahime as an example. First, let me say this. I did enjoy it. I did not enjoy it as much as I could have. So, reason why. Inuyasha, the story, it was Inuyasha and Kagome's story primarily. It was a story of them not only finding themselves and falling in love and all this stuff, but it was ultimately them discovering where their place was. And ultimately they decided their place was with each other. Okay, awesome. All the other stuff, dealing with demons, action, all that stuff, is part of the story, but it's not the center point. Same thing. The other characters, Sango, Moroku, Shippo, Shishomaru, Naraku, these are all other characters in the story, and they're either the villain, like Naraku, or they are secondary characters. So they add to the story, but they are not the center point of the story. So the issue is that, like I said, the original story's point was Inuyasha and Kagome's story, where they belong, etc. And they decided they belong with each other. That was the conclusion of their story. Now, if you're going to start a new story, you have to give the characters a new conflict, which is fine. But instead, what Yashahime does is they instead decide that they're going to follow the children of Shishomaru, which was a secondary character. Not a bad plan, but not quite right for a sequel. In a sequel, like when I heard the words Yashahime sequel to Inuyasha, first thing that popped in my mind, what are Inuyasha and Kagome up to? Because that was their story. If we're going to be following Shishomaru's story, which is fine, that's a spin-off. That's not a sequel. And I really think the advertisement is kind of what killed it, because I'm not the only person that when they heard sequel to Inuyasha got really excited because they wanted to see Inuyasha and Kagome, because that was their story. And sequel to me says, okay, we're continuing their story. Now what are they doing? Instead, they are barely in it. And their daughter, who is probably my favorite character out of the new group, is pushed aside quite frequently. And the animation and writing team has actually said they do that purposely because they don't want her to take over the two main characters. That to me says there's a problem with your main characters. If you're afraid a secondary character is going to overshadow a main character, perhaps you need to look at your main character. What are they not doing that the secondary character is doing? But like I said, I think both myself and a lot of other fans would have been more forgiving to this if they had advertised this as a spin-off instead of a sequel. I'll give you guys another example. The original Aladdin by Disney, it has 2 sequels. And it also has an animated series, but that's not important right now. It has 2 sequels. It has Return to Jafar, and it has Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Aladdin and the King of Thieves, third one, is received much, much higher ranking than Return to Jafar. Return to Jafar is usually regarded as like one of the worst of the Disney sequels. I still like it, but yeah, it's not the greatest. And I'm not talking animation or anything like that. It's a direct-to-TV budget. Get it? You know, I'm talking about writing and character. So this, I think, has a similar problem to what Yashahime had, in that The Return of Jafar is really a spin-off, not so much a sequel. How so? Well, Aladdin is Aladdin's story. And this is also a problem I had with the live action movie, in that they still kept it titled Aladdin, but it kind of became Jasmine's story, which would have been fine, but advertise it that way. Anyway, so the original Aladdin, that was Aladdin's story. Return of Jafar is Iago's story. Aladdin's still there. He's still prevalent. He's still important to the plot, but the viewpoint and the emotional conflict is all on Iago. Again, here's that shift from we start with one character story, and instead of continuing it, we are moving to a new character. That to me is not sequel, that is spin-off. Aladdin and the King of Thieves continues Aladdin's story because he is the emotional center. It is about his relationship or non-existent relationship with his father and how it is affecting his ability to move on with his own life and his fears and concerns about taking the final step with Jasmine and getting married. So that is a definite sequel. Now, does that one have other advantages like Robin Williams as a genie? Yeah. But thing is, the genie isn't as involved in that movie as he was in the original movie, which is actually a good thing because he's a secondary character. He's a strong secondary character, but he is a secondary character. Aladdin is the main focus. And that is the big difference to me between these 2 sequels and why I think they were received differently. Because Iago was very much a secondary character in the original movie. He was Jafar's lackey. And the sequel takes his character and has him go through a redemption arc, which I'm not against. I actually think it works very, very well, but not as a sequel. Again, I think if this had been advertised differently as this is a spin-off to the original movie and not so much as a sequel, I think it would have been received a lot better. So that's kind of where my conflict is here, in that I think the way you market a story can have a huge impact on how people receive it. So if I'm expecting a continuation of the main character's story from the first one, because you tell me it's a sequel and I don't get that, that automatically sours me to it. Even if it's a well-written story, even if the characters are good, even if the villain's good, I kind of feel cheated. And that sours my viewpoint of the story as a whole. Whereas if you told me it was a spin-off, I go in not expecting necessarily the same characters, not expecting to even follow the same plot or the same timeline. And so therefore I'm much more open-minded. And I know some people will respond to this, well, you should be more open-minded with a sequel anyway. But the thing is, the way you market something, it puts an expectation in your brain. And it's not so easy to just say, oh, well, that's not what they're doing. I'll shift my viewpoint now. It's not that easy. So that's just kind of a brief thing I wanted to touch on today, because I think sequels and spin-offs are becoming much more popular. And I do think they can be done well. I have definitely seen sequels done well. I have definitely seen spin-offs done very well. But you have to bear in mind that you're marketing the right thing. Because like I said, if you market the wrong thing, then you put these expectations in the minds of your potential readers, your potential viewers. And if it's the wrong expectation, it can have a sour effect on how your product is received. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Like I said, I still enjoyed Yashahime, but could have been a lot better. And honestly, if they had continued to follow the original character story, I would have liked it a lot better. But it is what it is. Will I still watch season 2? Yeah, probably. I'll probably still check it out and see what happens. But I'm not excited anymore. So, you know, there's that. So thank you guys for chiming in from my video. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. What to you constitutes a sequel and what to you constitutes a spin-off? And as always, if you guys have comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. I try to give you guys 2 videos a week. If you don't want to miss when I upload, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified whenever a new video goes up. And until next time, stay safe. Have a good one.